Hello, I am Ralph Cinque, the writer and executive producer of Joe Haladin, The Case of the Missing Sister. I would like to speak to you about the making of the film. First, I am very pleased with how it came out. I think it's a very substantial film, which we made for a very small budget, $125,000. Today, that's considered not just low budget, but micro budget. But despite the small budget, I think we made a very substantial movie. And I say that because, like all movies, it has an external story. It's about a private investigator who is searching for a missing twin sister who is mired in a religious cult, and his pursuit of her is the external story. But there's also an internal story, internal to Joe, in which he is grappling with issues that arise from the search and how they pertain to his life. I won't get more specific than that, but they are major life issues that pertain to everybody, and the pondering of them is what gives substance to the film. Now, this began as an attempt to make a very retro film noir. And I'm a big fan of film noir, which often featured a cynical, hard-boiled private eye, such as Philip Marlowe from the Raymond Chandler novels. And my favorite Philip Marlowe is Robert Mitchum from Farewell, My Lovely. I like him even better than Humphrey Bogart in The Big Sleep, although I'm also a big fan of Bogart. Well, Joe Haladin, who is played very talentedly by Samuel French, I wouldn't say that he is so hard-boiled, but he is cynical. When Reverend Case Jones, played by Clinton Springer, asks him if he is a man of God, Joe says that, well, he and God have a covenant, that he doesn't make trouble for God and God doesn't make trouble for him. And that's pretty cynical. Another element of film noir is the femme fatale. And in this case, it's the character of Colette Townsend, who is one of the twin sisters, the one who comes forward, who is played by Regan Kelly. Now, usually in film noir, the femme fatale tries to use her wily feminine charms to manipulate the protagonist, and that's not exactly true here, partly because of the age difference. But she does try to manipulate him, and she is very crafty about it. And there is an unstated adversarial tension between them at all times. Another element of film noir is that the protagonist often has a female confidant who is like a sounding board to him, usually very extroverted and a bit hyper compared to the staid protagonist. For instance, in Vertigo, the character of Midge, played by Barbara Bel Geddes, to Jimmy Stewart's Scotty. Another example is the character of Betty, played by Nancy Olson, to William Holden's Joe Gillis in Sunset Boulevard, where he is the struggling screenwriter and she is his editor. So I wanted a character like that, and we got one. It's Lacey Stevens, who is Joe's assistant in the PI business, and she is feisty and outgoing and definitely revved up compared to Joe, and played beautifully by Bethany Becker. Another element I wanted was the devoted woman who wants to prove herself to the protagonist. For instance, in Rear Window by Alfred Hitchcock, it's Grace Kelly's character, who is the fiancée to Jimmy Stewart's wheelchair-bound character. She wants to prove herself to him, and she does something very dangerous to help him solve a murder. Well, Joe's wife, Laura, who is played by Ariane Martin, is like that, and she takes a big risk to get information for him, and it's harrowing. And by the way, the man who is chasing her there is our producer, Jeff Caperton. Another element of film noir is the dim lighting, because it's a dark world full of ominous shadows and pinpoint light. So we went for that effect in this movie. And here's an example of it, featuring Clinton Springer and Regan Kelly. And here's another example of it. And on the right, that actor is Dave Bodenbender, playing Sheriff Rex Mabum. And we kept up the subdued lighting. Here's another example. That's Jody Stelzig, who is also the film's director. I won't tell you about his character or what that's about, except to say that he plays a very pivotal role. Now, I want to talk about Chinatown because that was a big inspiration to me. I presume you've seen it, so you know that it's about a mysterious young woman who proves to be the sister of the femme fatale played by Faye Dunaway, and she is also her daughter. But the biggest thing about Chinatown is Jack Nicholson. He is in every scene of the movie. The camera never goes anywhere without him. And that is amazing because it is very difficult to write a cohesive script and do that, to stay entirely on the protagonist. But that's what Robert Towne did, and that's one of the reasons why it is considered the greatest screenplay ever written. Well, I was aiming to do that in writing this script. I didn't quite get there. Joe Haladin is in 42 out of 48 scenes of the film. So he is very, very dominant in the movie, but not quite as much as Jake Gittes in Chinatown. And Samuel French gave so much nuance and personable distinction to Joe Haladin that he brought him to life and got him sold in a similar way. So without going quite as far, there is a similar uber dominance of Sam's Joe Haladin that is modeled after the dominance that Jack Nicholson's Jake Gittes has in Chinatown. Now, there's one more bit of inspiration that I got from Chinatown. It concerns the musical score. Chinatown has one of the most beautiful scores ever written, and it was written by Jerry Goldsmith. And the love theme from Chinatown is considered one of the most hauntingly beautiful pieces of music ever written. And it features a trumpet solo. So in honor of Jerry Goldsmith, I decided that I wanted to have a trumpet solo to be an important element in the score. And I found one. He is from Mykolaiv, Ukraine. His name is Oleg Taganov, and he recorded the trumpet solo for this score in the sound room in his home in Mykolaiv during the war. So I think that is a very poignant point about the film. Finally, in film noir, there is usually an epiphany at the end in which the protagonist has his whole view of life changed as a result of the events in the film, and he talks about it. And that is true in Missing Sister, as discussed in the final scene between Samuel French and Ariane Martin. And it's actually one of my favorite scenes in the film because they did it so well with so much poignancy and insight. So the bottom line is that with a very small budget, we told a very big story. And I suspect that even critical critics of the film, and I'm sure there are going to be some, will admit that at least we aspired to tell a very big story. So thank you for listening to this. I hope you will be stirred to watch the film. You can see the link to it in this final frame, and it's very easy to remember. It's vimeo.com/ondemand/missing sister.